He is the king. Apollo has had portraits painted by past students. There's one portrait. Isn't that beautiful? And then this one was drawn. This one, the person went onto his social media account. He does have an Instagram. And they copied and drew one of his pictures. Isn't that cool? He's got some really good fans.
You see from like,
Hey,
you see like the board.
Oh,
Ish.
oh, it's fine.
Okay.
Whatever you think, whatever you would want, let's do. All right, beautiful people, you ready? Today is a fun lecture. Hey, you with me? Today is a fun lecture. Okay, so I'm gonna be real with you. When I first taught on sensation and perception, like the first year I ever taught the class Phones Away, I didn't like it. I was very overwhelmed by it even as a teacher. Like, I know the information, but I'm like, how do I communicate this, right? Like, how do I get them to get this? This is a lot. It's so much teaching. It's so much talking. I'm overwhelmed by it. That was kind of how I felt. Now I love it because it really gives you a lot of clarity on why you experience life the way you do and why other people experience life the way they do. And I cannot stress how cool this unit can be if you just really buy into it. So you have the profound power to change the way your day goes and to change the way this class goes. And it has to do with the perspective you have. When you walk in here, you're like, this is going to suck, I don't want to take notes, etc. Then guess what? It is going to suck and you're not going to want to take notes. So please buy into it. Buy into my excitement for the content. Buy into it because it really is, I'm telling you, it's genuine. I disliked this unit and now I love this unit. And it's way better when you love it. Okay? You guys with me? Anthony, do you feel me? Are we on the same page? All right, we cracked a smile. We're good. All right, here we go. Did I do this with you? Yes. Okay, sweet. So we understand prosopagnosia? Okay, let's see. Prosopagnosia is a condition that this guy John has. Please answer for me. Is it John's sensation or John's perceptual processes that is the issue? Think before you speak. Yeah, it's his perceptual issues. He sees his own face. He sees everybody else's faces. He can see it, 20/20 vision, but he can't attach meaning to it, which is a perceptual issue. You guys with me? So is his issue affecting his top-down processing or his bottom-up processing? Very good. It's affecting his top-down because top-down is referring to perception, bottom-up is referring to more of sensing, the sensory processes. What do you see? Just call it out.
Yeah, two people.
Two people.
It's two people.
A dog. Two people in a tree.
So point being, y'all are seeing different things, right? Y'all are seeing different things. Why are you seeing different things? What's going on? What is being used here? Well, if it was sensory bottom up, shouldn't you all be seeing the same thing? So what are you using when you call that out? Perception, which is what kind of processing? Top down. So based on familiar past experiences of artwork like this, maybe whether you have a grandfather that looks at that, maybe whether you just came from a history class and this types of like dress was just talked about in like Mr. Green's class, like I don't know. But is this on? Did I just hit it? I just hit it. Okay.
It's on, yeah.
All right, okay. With that being said, all right, if you have a dog, you probably noticed the dog, right? With that being said, it was top-down processing that impacted what you see first. Okay, so we're going to watch a couple of videos today. The first one is going to be an American Express video, okay? So I'm going to play this video for you. You're going to first tell me what is, I'm going to ask two questions at the end. What is the message American Express is trying to communicate? That's question one. Ready? And then question two is, what type of processing did American Express use to communicate that message? You guys with me? Here we go.
Sometimes, the little things in life feel like our biggest enemies. They can be damaged. They can be stolen. Happily, there's the American Express charge card. If something you recently bought with the card breaks, it can be repaired, replaced, or your account can be credited. You'll even get membership rewards points with each purchase. And peace of mind when you travel. Can your card say that?
What is the message of that commercial? Not psych stuff, just tell me what it's trying to say. I'll get started.
American Express equals smiley face.
Okay, what does smiley face represent?
Happy.
Okay, American Express equals happiness. What were the faces before you got the American Express? Sad. So life without American Express is not good. Life with American Express is happier. Okay. Did they communicate that through showing you chairs, irons, ships, boats, or did they communicate that through the symbol of a smile? Okay, so very good. Through the facial expression, the smiling in the end. What type of processing did they use? Who said it? This is top down. When you walked out of this, you're not like, oh wow, tons of random household and like day-to-day products. I guess that's good. You were like, oh, smiles, facial expressions. Facial expressions, boom. Because they're employing your top-down processing. So if you immediately, at some point, were like, there's a facial expression there, it's top-down processing. Because that is not what this is. This is a hanger on a door. But your brain attached meaning and jumped right ahead to top-down processing. Facial expression. Does that make sense? Are you with me? It's almost like you can't help it. Your brain does it automatically.
Does different people have like inclinations to different times? Okay.
Yes, which is going to talk to you. This is going to be part of what gets into why we all perceive the world so differently. This unit is going to help you be the initial stage of helping you understand. This is just a review summary slide right here. Okay, help you understand why you and you can have the exact same experience but walk away with totally different views of what happened. Okay, this is the start of it. We all have different top-down processing based on different expectations, previous knowledge, previous experiences, etc., right? And I'm going to add in so many more examples of top-down processing, things like context effects and perceptual sets. I'm going to teach you all about that as we go. Okay, so this unit gets super cool. All right, next big concept, selective attention. We're pretty much going to spend the rest of the day talking about two big things, threshold, psychophysics, and selective attention. So there's going to be a lot here, so please be with me. Ready? Selective attention is also known as focused attention. AKA, selective AKA means also known as focused attention. Ready? Here's your definition. The focusing of your conscious awareness on a particular stimulus. I hate to break it to you, and some of you are not going to like this. I think I've already said this before in the past, but your conscious attention can only be in one place at one time. And my multitaskers are like lies, not true. I can be doing many things all at the same time. Pause, let me explain. I think I've used this analogy before, but your conscious attention is like a flashlight. If it's here, it cannot be here, okay? If it's in one place, that beam is here and it's not in other places. Now, a really good way for us to see how selective attention works is while driving, okay? So I know none of us text and drive, but let's just pretend we did, okay? So I want to give you a couple car scenarios. Ready? You're in the car and you're singing to a song you know, a favorite song, okay? Is your conscious attention needed for you to sing the memorized lyrics you know? No, you can do it mindlessly. So I want you to picture driving. Well, first of all, picture driving with nothing going on. Just you in the car. Are you driving well? Yeah, you're driving well, right? You're not swerving. You're not hitting, almost hitting somebody in the blind spot. You're not slamming on the brakes because the person stopped in front of you, right? Now you put on the music. Are you still driving well? Yeah, we just said there's no conscious really attention to the music you memorize. So you're still driving well. Why? You have not challenged selective attention, okay? There is no motor skills needed for singing a song that's like consciously needed, okay? Now I want you to be having a conversation in the car. Either another person in the car with you or a phone call, even if it's hands-free phone call, right, on your car. But you're now having a conversation, and it's not somebody like that you don't want to talk to. It's not like, I don't know, like your mom or somebody who is just talking, you're like, right? You're actually in the conversation, right? You care about it, you're passionate about it. Maybe it's controversial, maybe it's just like, she said what? Like you are playing an active role in the conversation. How is your driving now? Is it affected at all? Be honest. Yeah, you're like, really into the conversation, even though there's like nobody there, they're right next to you, and it's like, oh shoot, I was a little bit hard on the brake that time. It was a fraction of a second too slow, right? Now let's step it up. We just challenged this a little bit. If you're being honest and thinking about that situation, you can remember that happening to you. Now we're texting and driving, okay? So now you're texting and going, maybe some of us it's this, okay? Right? And you're texting and driving, and you are like, right? Am I not doing this correctly?
Why have phones so low though? I feel like having fun.
Okay.
I know, that's what I don't get. I don't get the people who are like this.
Well, I think because they're worried about
I
think they're worried about people judging them. That's me. I'm worried about people judging me texting and driving.
Someone texts and drives.
I know, I don't like it, but I know it's not good. Anyway, so, or maybe they're worried of cops coming by and it's like, ugh. Okay, anyway. It's like you guys texting in class. Like, why are you doing it down here? Okay, so with that being
like
said,
desks are see-through.
yeah, like I can see you under the desk. And also this body positioning is like, I know you're not paying attention to lecture, right? It's not like, yes, really good notes. Like what? Okay, so more selective attention issues, okay? The biggest issue with car accidents is selective attention. That's why car accidents really do happen. Obviously, if you're like on a substance, that's an issue, but selective attention, okay? Now, here's the thing, multitasking. Multitasking changes you from a selective attention and it forces you to use what's called divided attention, where your brain is selective, selective, flashlight, 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 this task, that task. And here's the other thing. This is heartbreaking. I've had a hard time accepting this in my life personally because I like multitasking, but you never do the job as well as you could if you were doing it singularly with all of your focus on one. Here's an example. Yesterday I was sending a bunch of emails and I had a student who stayed with me till like 4:30, just like they're waiting to go to an event and they just wanted to hang and talk. And it was a great conversation. It was awesome, but I also had to send a couple important emails. And then after the student left, and I was like, that was so great. I happened to read over my email. I'm like, oh crap, I made like 2 typos in it. Didn't even realize it. Okay, why? Selective attention. I was multitasking and not doing my conversation or the email as good as it could have been. Okay? Now, here's your Necker cube. Often the Necker cube, have I spent a lot of time here? What does that mean? Oh, I love it, so smart. Okay, so the Necker cube is often shown to you and then you'll be asked, what is this showing? Well, one of the common things assessed with the Necker cube is the principle of selective attention. So when looking at the Necker cube, tell me really quickly, what do you see?
A cube.
You see a cube. Does anybody not see the cube and see something else? Nobody sees anything else?
Like a
Circles.
circle.
Peace signs.
Circles, peace signs. Yeah, does anybody see the X?
Yeah.
Somebody said arrows going through circles, or just arrows, right? So look at the X really quickly. When you're looking at the X, what are you not looking at? Everything else. When you're seeing the cube, the perimeter of the cube, you are not focusing on the peace signs, the arrows, and the X. So the Necker cube has shown us through studies, if you don't believe me, just know that it's true, all right? If you don't feel it now, know that it's true. You are only able to focus your attention on one part of the cube at a time, but you shift back and forth really quickly to see all the parts. Does that make sense? Okay. Selective attention is now going to be the next 4 terms we go over, and it's going to be examples of because of selective attention, we have this. So, example of selective attention number 1 is cocktail party effect. This one is super easy to remember because I literally want you to think of a cocktail party, okay? At a cocktail party, your selective attention is going to play a very important role in helping you at the party. All right, and it's called this cocktail party effect. So think of a cocktail environment, right? You're here, look, you're out, you're socializing, it's a networking event, there's music, there's maybe like music or a DJ, there's people everywhere, there's plates like clanging around in the kitchen, right? You got a bunch of noises. The cocktail party effect, because it is an example of selective attention, is the ability to focus your listening attention on a single stimulus or voice among a mixture of many other conversations and background noises. You with me? I'm going to give you a real-world example of both of these. Hypothetically saying, this is hypothetically, okay? Let's say Jordan and I were out at like a networking event. We were actually out at like a happy hour cocktail party event, right? And I'm sitting here and I'm talking with Lori. Lori's my new friend I just met, and we're like absolutely like, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. This is so cool, right? And then Jordan's a couple feet over there, and you know, there's noise, there's sound, there's whatever. I am focusing my attention with the loud music and the multiple conversations on what Lori's saying. And we're like hitting it off, and we're talking, and I can focus on your voice among all the other things, right? But then I'm also able to do this. While I'm talking to Lori, because of the cocktail party effect, Jordan's right over here, not really paying attention to him, but all of a sudden I notice a girl I don't like is talking to him. But I'm still talking to Lori. Do you think I'm paying attention to what Lori's saying? Not a word, because I am able to, thank you cocktail party effect, to send my little sensation of hearing over to exactly what's being said over there, right? Every girl has this superpower. Okay, with that being said, that's cocktail party effect. Second example, okay? Let's say I'm talking over here with a group of people, okay? And Jordan's nowhere. We don't have to worry about Jordan, okay? So we're here, and all of a sudden, across the room, far, far, far away, I hear somebody say, Sam. I'm like, yeah, what's up, you talking about me, right? You're walking up and down the halls, and somebody says the name Colby. You're like, yeah. Right? Your name is drawn, or your name draws your attention immediately because of the cocktail party effect. Do you see my 2 examples? You gotta know both, Here's a real world example. It's from your textbook, and I've seen it in test questions before. There was an actual flight where the pilots overflew the destination by 150 miles. I kid you not. If you want all the details, check out your textbook. They overflew and never landed by 150 miles. And the whole time, over like the pilot, like intercom or whatever you call it, they were like yelling the flight number and trying to get the pilot's attention, but they just didn't. The pilots were zoned out. They had it on autopilot, because just so you know, that's what happens. Like, it's on autopilot most of the time. And they were like on their phones or on their laptops, just like totally zoned out. They were tired, they were over it. They didn't hear the radio information coming in. Why? Because their attention was focused elsewhere, selective attention. But here's what didn't happen. They did a whole study on this. Nobody ever called the pilots' names. They didn't use it, they were just using the flight number. If they had called the pilots' names, right? Craig, Bill, do you think they would have gotten their attention? Immediately, why? Cocktail party effect. You guys with me? Okay, so this is a good thing. It is good that I can listen to Lori and not be overwhelmed by all of the other stimuli in the cocktail party room, right? Next one, these are kind of like your drawbacks or the negatives, the things that will hinder you because of selective attention. You guys ready? We already know that multitasking is limited. Now we gotta look at these two. Inattentional blindness. I like to think of it as unintentional blindness. It's not un, it's in. Inattentional blindness. So this is not on purpose, but because of selective attention, because of your flashlight of conscious awareness, you fail to see visible objects when your attention is directed elsewhere. Okay? For instance, all right, many of you may not have noticed that I have my answer keys right here. Why? Why don't you notice that? Because your attention has been directed over here while I'm lecturing. Does that make sense? You failed to see it. They're sitting right here. Okay? With that being said, that's inattentional blindness. It's in your visual field. It's not like it's not in your sight. It's not hidden in the closet. It's there, but your attention has been directed elsewhere. You missed it. You did not form a perception on it. You didn't even sense it, technically. You with me? Okay. Well, you did sense it through your vision, but you didn't perceive it. Okay, next. Inattentional blindness has a type, and the type is called change blindness. You need to know that. Change blindness is a type of inattentional blindness. But it's going to be more focused on changing. Okay, so here we go. The inability to see changes in our environment when our attention is, again, directed elsewhere. An example of this would be, I direct your attention over here, and while I'm doing that, while I get Joyce's attention over there, I switch out our phones. And she doesn't even notice, because let's say hypothetically I'd really plan this and put your attention over there. Okay, can you think of like an industry or a career line that might want to take advantage of this?
Pickpocketers.
Pickpocketers, that's not a career line, but yeah, I guess it is, okay. It is, it's like, you know, like black market, like type career line, yeah, totally, okay. Magicians. What did you say? The FBI, okay, fair enough, yeah, anything having to do with espionage, totally. Thieves, espionage, and magicians is what I was going for, but yes, all three are true. They take advantage of this. You with me? Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple examples, and you need to tell me which one is taking place. All right, here we go.
Have you ever watched Brain Games?
Oh, girl, have I ever watched Brain Games?
But there's like a thing. Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
I have the link here.
Okay.
I'm not going to show that one to you, but I link it here for you to see it. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, tell me what's going on. I keep grabbing this.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear? Test.
It's like something like this though.
How many passes does the team in white make?
And there it is. Okay. The end is this. Oh, darn it, I just took a bite. Okay. Right? And it's easy to miss something you were not looking for. Think before you speak, what type of blindness was that? Beautiful. That's inattentional blindness. We're not changing anything. It's just what's in front of you. But because of selective attention, you were counting passes and you missed the other stimuli. You just didn't even process it. Because your attention is selective. It can only be in one place at one time. Okay, next one.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away. It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you? Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts and precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
The whole guy who was murdered changed.
Yeah, change. It's a different person.
Anything.
They didn't notice anything.
The only thing I saw was the bear, because I saw
Yeah.
the first
And here's the thing. You probably noticed it because what are we talking about? In the context of the class, right?
I'm going bear hunting today. So
Oh, that could be it. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's called a perceptual set. That's so cool. Okay, that's a perceptual set. We'll learn about that later. Because that is on your mind right now, that is framing or shaping what you perceive. Again, why people walk away from the same experience with totally different perspectives. Okay? And they're so confident about their perspective being accurate because they genuinely didn't notice the other stuff. Does that make sense? Like you could argue there was a bear and you would be like, no, there wasn't. Because you saw the soldier dude, right? Like, this is how huge tension can arise between people. Anyway, okay, what type of blindness is this? Change. Change blindness is a type of what? No, inattentional blindness. Close, but a form of inattentional blindness, and this is all because we have what? Your flashlight. What do we call it? Beautiful, selective attention. Okay, I need a volunteer. Oh, you both put your hands up at the same time.
You're good.
Jenna will be the tiebreaker. Okay, here we go. Ready? I need you to read the words out loud.
Red, which way?
Add whatever you want.
Red, blue, yellow, purple, orange, green, black, blue, red, green, purple, black.
Beautiful. Okay, I want you to do the next one, but follow the directions. Say the color, not the word. Go.
Red, purple, green, black, blue, yellow, yellow, black, blue, red, blue, green, blue, red.
Well done. Very good. But was it harder the second time or easier?
It's harder.
It's a lot harder, right? And the reason it's a lot harder is because this is the Stroop effect, and the Stroop effect is because we have selective attention. Ready? Here's another example. Thank you for demonstrating that so well, Jenna. All right, another example of selective attention is the Stroop effect. Ready? It demonstrates the psychological or cognitive difficulty of selectively, ready? Attending means focusing on, of attending or placing your priority, your focus to the color of the word or the ink instead of the actual word. And part of that is because you're so used to focusing your attention on words, right? The written word, written language, your brain is like kind of like really quick to do that. You have to ignore, this is the explanation that I'm verbally saying to you, so you don't need to read it, but you have to ignore the automatic place you want to face your attention, focus your attention, and go for the secondary, which is the color shown. You guys with me? And the only reason that was more difficult is because of selective attention. Okay. All right, that's my question. If you could sense absolutely everything, all of the senses, everything in the world, how would that feel? Yeah, it's called what? Anybody know what that's called? Sensory overload, right? You're overly stimulated and it would not feel good. Life would literally hurt. You wouldn't be able to think. You wouldn't be able to communicate any words based on your thinking. Life would just hurt. You would literally be like your brain exploding, okay? So because we don't feel everything in the world because it would hurt, we have what's called the field of psychophysics. And the psychophysics field explains what humans perceive and what they don't. Pretty much, I'm going to tie back to what I said yesterday. What goes through our window and what doesn't? Be with me, Xander. What goes through our window and what doesn't? Remember, the window to the brain is your window to your brain. That thing sitting in your skull in darkness is, what's your window?
Your eyes.
Not your eyes. Well, yes, your eyes, but sensation or perception? What's your window? Sensation is your window. Perception is what? Where we give
What your brain does with.
meaning. Yes, meaning. Your brain does organizing, interpreting with what comes through the window. You had a question.
Like people with autism,
Yes.
do they sense like more because
Yes.
they can't sense more? That's why they have all these like meltdowns.
So autism, previously known as autism, now known as autistic spectrum disorder, but it's the same thing, ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, sometimes experience overstim, okay? And the reason for that is their brain is taking in too much. Their brain isn't able to process the pretty much there's a selective tension issue, all right? And it can be too much and overwhelming cognitively and then emotionally, okay? Yeah, great question. So psychophysics is pretty much the study of the relationship between the actual sensory stimuli, the physical stimuli, and then how you psychologically experience it as a human, right? And we have a bunch of principles and thresholds and laws that are going to explain what humans can sense and what humans can't. You with me? You guys with me? Be with me. So this is our new topic. First thing you need to know is this guy, Gustav Fechner. Okay, so it's random. By random, it's popping up more in your AP exam. I don't really have much to tell you other than you need to know the name. You know that he's kind of like the OG or the founder of psychophysics. He's the OG or founder of psychophysics. All right, he also, as the OG founder of psychophysics, right? He is the one who gave us these two terms that we're about to spend a lot of time on. Absolute thresholds and different thresholds. So whenever you see those threshold words, know that he's going to be connected to it. He studied sensory systems, he studied psychophysics, and he coined or discovered absolute and different thresholds. That's all you need to know. You good with that? Okay, going forward. So, can you see that picture and tell me exactly what's going on? There's a picture in the bottom right-hand corner. Can you tell me exactly what's going on in it?
There's a person in the middle.
Okay. But nobody can tell me exactly what's going on, right? Okay, fair enough. Some of you know some about it. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start zooming into the picture, okay? And right when it gets to the point where you can tell me where this person is, who this person is, what they are downing, all the details. You know exactly, perfectly what's going on. I want you to raise your hand. You with me? And let's see, I'll explain why our hands may be raised at different times. You gotta be able to tell me what he's drinking.
Oh, I thought it was Cheese Whiz. It was like the can.
Okay, all your hands went up at different times. Some of you are too cool for school and didn't put your hands up. But anyway, I saw you all. I judged you. All right, so with that being said, when you were able, at what point in visual clarity, you were able to make out what is going on here, which wouldn't that be just absolutely hysterical to see going on in the library on college campus?
That makes sense.
Did anybody see the grapes?
Surprised.
Did anybody see the grapes earlier?
I thought they were Brussels sprouts, but
Oh, those are light Brussels sprouts. But yeah, anyway.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That is weird. Cream and Brussels sprout, that would be hard.
So, your ability, ready? Here's why I show you this. We just experienced something. We experienced absolute threshold, okay? When you couldn't tell what this was, the stimuli was below your absolute threshold. When you could tell what it was, at whatever point it was, I don't know when it was for you, but at whatever point it was, when you were like, I see, now it is above your absolute threshold. You with me? That's how I want you to think about it. Now, there's a specific percentage you got to memorize, and that's what we're going to talk about here. So this picture was our absolute threshold example. Ready? Now, here's the definition. Here we go. Absolute thresholds, is the minimum, the weakest stimulation needed to detect or to notice a singular stimulus 50% of the time. Got to know that. The minimum stimulus needed to detect a minimum stimulation needed to detect a stimulus 50% of the time. So this is how we understand where the line is of what we are consciously aware of and not aware of. And it's at this point, we've said it, Gustav Fechner said it at, okay, you are aware of whether that light is there, that sound is there, that taste is there 50% of the time when I keep showing you that same strength stimulus. 50% of the time you know, 50% of the time you don't. Everything above your absolute threshold you perceive and take in and are aware of. Everything below that threshold you are not aware of the stimulation. Does that make sense? Okay, so here the human average absolute threshold. You don't need to memorize these, but you need to recognize them. If they put this up and say a human or a person is able to see a candle flame 30 miles away on a clear night 50% of the time, you would need to know, oh, that's an absolute threshold example. You with me? Yeah, these are like the average human ones.
30 miles.
Yeah, on a clear night. Isn't that crazy? You actually sense a lot. Hearing a watch ticking 20 feet away in obviously a quiet room, feeling a bee's wing falling a distance of 1 centimeter onto your cheek, and again, your cheek. My cheek is way more sensitive than my knee. Why? This is a hard question. Why is my cheek more sensitive?
It has more spot in the.
Yes. Oh, I love all of it. Yes. It has more cortical space, but you are correct. It has more space on your somatosensory cortex, which is in your parietal lobe. Excellent. Yeah.
Is it possible to not lose, but if you hit your leg a lot of times in your life, you're not going to notice hitting your leg much.
You're talking about a term I'm going to teach you in a second.
Okay,
Just
great.
chill for a little bit. I love it. Okay, here we go. Smelling 1 drop of perfume in a room of a 3-room house, and then a teaspoon of sugar in a 2-gallon bottle of water. You guys good? So those are your 50% of the time humans will sense this. 50% of the time they won't. Everything below this, what do we call that? Well, it's below your absolute threshold. What does that mean? Well, no, if it's below your absolute threshold, are you aware of it?
No.
No, you're not. Beautiful. Now we're in difference threshold. Please don't mix these up. Please hear the difference between them. Okay, ready? Look, the word difference is here. So can it be a singular thing? No, there either is going to be a change in that stimulus or 2 stimuli you're comparing. So difference threshold is the smallest amount of change in a stimulus that will produce a change in sensation, meaning you're feeling, seeing, perceiving, hearing, or tasting the difference. Pause. This is synonymous with this and this. There are 3 names. AKA means also known as, in case you didn't know that, difference threshold is the JND, which also is the just noticeable difference. The change is so weak, but just noticeable. Does that make sense? Okay, so an example being what I have here. If you can see the difference in the brightness of light, that brightness of light change is above your difference threshold. Does that make sense? Okay, here are some examples. All right, if you have ever been in the car driving with a friend, right, and you're all hanging out talking, maybe one friend takes a phone call, and they're like, hey, can you turn the music down? And you turn it down. You're like, oh, man, I'll turn it down. It's not as enjoyable now, but whatever. She's on the phone, right? And then the friend is like, hey, I said, can you turn it down? So the friend doesn't think you turned it down enough, but you're like, man, I turned that down quite a bit. The difference between you two and your perception of high or low volume is you have different difference thresholds. Does that make sense?
Does this change with age?
It can change with age. Beautiful question. Over time, overall, we become less sensitive to stimuli. Babies are born, for instance, very sensitive to senses, which is why, think about it, do babies like very, very distinct flavors? Do babies like spinach and Brussels sprouts and hot sauce? Do they like that? No, because guess what? They actually have more taste buds than you and I do. They're very acute to sensation. So when we force these like strong flavors on kids, you're actually like overwhelming them with the sensation of taste. And same thing is for all senses, yeah.
Do men have lower? Because like if you like.
Okay, on a sensory level, no,
Yeah.
it's perceptual differences.
Oh,
If for this topic, if you see differences in the way a male and a female process certain things, it's perceptual and where their conscious attention is focused more than taste, specifically a biologically rooted difference here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna give you some more examples of difference threshold, but anytime you sense something like somebody says, turn the AC down. And you're like, I did, I'm freezing. They're like, I don't feel a difference. Like this happens with Jordan and I all the time. I'm like, I'm freezing. He's like, it's still hot. I'm like, your difference threshold sucks. Right? Okay, not really, but like that's an example, okay? So how do we explain this? Where is the difference threshold? How much change do we need? Okay, that is explained by Weber's law. You need to know that. Weber's law also known as Weber, because we have this other guy, Ernest Weber, who got together with Gustav Fechner, and then they worked together, right? This law is a psychophysics law that talks about the exact amount of change needed to explain the difference threshold, or the JND. Does that make sense so far? Okay, before I get to Weber's law, this is a phenomenal slide that gives excellent definitions, examples, and visuals of how these two thresholds are different. You have to know this. It is tested heavily. It is tested heavily. I love this. Are you aware that this light is here? Yes or no? That sets your absolute threshold because you see it 50% of the time. Can you see the change in these brightnesses? If you can't, it's below your difference threshold. If you can, it's above your difference threshold. You with me? Okay, Weber's law. Ready? Weber's law is a measure of the physical proportion of change necessary or needed before we sense the change. So it is the law that explains difference threshold. This right here is a little bit redundant, but I put it in here because it's literally like pretty much copy pasted from College Board. It is literally the wording they use when they ask about Weber's law. Ready? Weber's law is a law that concerns the relationship between the intensity of a stimulus, so the strength of a stimulus, and its corresponding psychological sensation. That's how they define Weber's law. Yes, sir?
So like how many degrees you have to drop the temperature to feel it?
Yes, exactly. How many pounds you have to change the weight. How many ticks on the volume you have to change the volume. It's exactly what it is. And I'm gonna give you some examples, right? So Weber's law shows that to perceive a difference between stimuli, this is so important. This is what you gotta grab. Must differ by a constant proportion. You gotta know that. It's not a constant amount. It's a constant proportion. That's what the law says, okay? So here's where the constant proportion is gonna come in. You ready? The stronger the stimulus, the bigger the change needed to notice the difference. All right? The weaker the stimulus, the less change needed to notice the difference. Here's an example, okay? Have you ever been in your room listening to loud music, like ever before? Anybody ever listen to loud music at the house? Yeah, okay. And you're listening to it, maybe you just aren't having the best day, you like are really, maybe you're just loving the song, I don't know, but you are just like, you're going hard to the song, right? And a parent or somebody else, hey, turn the music down. And you're just like, ruining my vibe, right? So what do? You walk over and you like put it down like one notch. You're like, huh? Right? And you go back to your thing. And then like a minute or even a second later, depending on who you're talking to, they yell, I said, turn the music down. And what do you yell back? I did. Okay? But because you had it so loud, that tiny little change you made was not enough to make the change sensible. Like you couldn't sense it because it doesn't make sense. Weber's law says you're not going to notice it because the change was not proportional to the strength of the original stimulus, which was loud music. You with me? Now let's flip it. Let's say, have you ever watched those videos of like somebody records something on like TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube and the volume's like so low and you're like, I can't hear, it stinks. And if somebody were to just turn that notch down one, the volume down one, you like literally wouldn't be able to hear. That's because it was a faint stimuli to begin with. So a little change impacts it a lot. You with me? Okay, so now let's apply this. This is an awesome, I know you can't see it, but there's a link right there that's phenomenal to go watch another small lecture to explain all these. So know that that's there. Here's a test type question, and then we're gonna read it, and then we're gonna do our own where we have to actually answer it. So this is like what you see on multiple choice. If you are carrying 20 pounds and you add 5 pounds, that change is noticeable, okay? According to Weber's law, it is above your difference threshold. However, if you're carrying 100 pounds and you add only 5 pounds, most people are not gonna notice it because it's below their difference threshold. And we know that because the amount changed is not proportional to the original stimulus. That's Weber's law. Does that make sense? So you would need to add more. You'd need a bigger change, such as 10 pounds, to a 100-pound original stimulus to make it noticeable, to make it above the JND, or the difference threshold. You with me on that? Okay, let's test it out. If a weightlifter needs to add 2 pounds to 10 pounds to notice the difference, how many pounds need to be added to 100 pounds to notice the difference? 20 would be your answer to make it proportional. If you didn't know that, or even if you did know, I would write it down on your sheet just so you can go back and study it later as an example of what you would have to do when looking at Weber's law. Okay, signal detection theory. So technically now we're going into a slightly different arena. Okay, signal detection theory is going to talk about, again, faint stimuli, but pretty much what this theory is saying, you with me? Hear this really quickly. It's pretty much saying that factors other than the physical strength and the sensory process have to do with whether you perceive it or not. And here's the factors this says matter. The psychological ones, your motivation, your pretty much your expectation, your emotional state, your fatigue level, like pretty much psychological things where you are mentally actually impacts whether you sense a stimulus or not. So it's not just the physical side of it, okay? So these are, in essence, these are things that you sense that technically should maybe even be below your absolute threshold, okay? So let's read it together. This signal detection, did you detect the sense, the signal, states that our ability to detect a signal depends not only on the strength of the stimulus, which is everything we just previously talked about, but also on your physical, are you fatigued, are you sleep deprived, etc., and psychological, what's your emotion, what's your motivation, what's your memories tied to this state. You guys with me? Okay, so it explains how, please be with me, non-sensory factors like attitudes, expectations, knowledge, etc., will impact whether you perceive something. So in essence, this says that sensing something is partially a judgment call. Does that make sense? You're judging important, unimportant. So this plays a role in what you perceive, not just the stimulus itself. Yes, ma'am?
So that would be like why if you put, like if you're lifting weights and someone puts like an extra 5 pounds on and you wouldn't do it because you didn't think you could do it, but then you're able to like.
Yes, if you have a mental reason for noticing, you might notice something below your difference threshold. Exactly, exactly. Like if you have like a fear of going heavy with weightlifting, you would notice precisely. Okay, let me give you 2 examples. Okay, parents with newborn babies, difference threshold, or just signal detection theory really applies to them. Okay, you could have a parent with a newborn baby in the house. Maybe you've even experienced this, right? And there can be loud noises going on. But that exhausted parent, let's say that exhausted mother with a newborn baby, she'll sleep through a hurricane. Like nothing's waking her except for what?
The baby crying.
The sound of the baby crying. That's signal detection theory. Right? You're not going to experience the louder noises, but the faintest noise from that child, boom, you're up. That's signal detection theory. Okay? Here's another example. So my mom, when I was your age, my mom was one of the she was the stricter parent, okay? And at the time, actually, like she was kind of like running the house, and at that point in time, my mom hated having to stay up for my sister and I to get home for our curfew. I had a sister who's 2.5 years younger than me. We had slightly different curfews because, of course, she cannot get home when I get home. That's not fair, right? So with that being said, whether it was, I don't know, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I don't remember, but there was a time we had to be home. My mom, because she was a rule, you know, she was the law enforcer, she always would be like up, like making sure the girls got home, right? She wouldn't be at the door, but it would be like, hey, you here? Like, did you lock the door, right? And so it was just like this whole thing. Like, we would tiptoe in. Like, we'd try to be quiet because mom didn't want to be woken up, but mom wanted to know we were home. It was this whole big thing. Like, we'd have to turn the lights off when we pulled in the driveway. Like, it was crazy, right? We couldn't cook food after it. Like, it was just a nightmare. And my mom didn't like it either, right? So my mom then comes up with this brilliant idea. Ready? She's like, oh, when you leave the house at like 8 or 9, whatever time you leave, I'm going to set a countdown timer. One of those little kitchen timers, right? For like 5 hours and 23 minutes, whatever it would be to be right at 1 a.m. And my mom's thought was, this is kind of smart, right? If you're not here to turn off the timer, and I hear the beep, 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 I know you're not home, right? So guess what happened to my mom? Signal detection theory. My mom started just totally ignoring all noises. The only thing that would wake her up was the timer. So now we'd come home, slam the door, music would be playing. I stopped turning off my lights as I came down the street. Like everything, like we could just come in and like do our thing. Mom didn't budge because mom mentally decided the timer is what I will wake up to. The other senses, the other noises, I will not sense. You guys with me?
That's when you come back like an hour later, turn it off, and then you don't come.
That's exactly what we did. She did not realize we'd come in, stop the timer, and just go right back out. But it worked great. It worked great for like the 2 months we used it. So, if you see this graph or anything like it, it's just signal detection theory. You guys with me? Okay, if you see this pop up, you don't need to hardcore understand it, and you could if you just took some time to look at it. This is asking about signal detection theory. Did the person sense the thing? Okay, ready? So, if there is a signal present, this is what this is saying, and you noticed it, we call it a hit. This is the next one. If there is a signal present, and you don't notice it, you missed the sensory signal. Does that make sense? No signal, you thought you heard something. This is my mom's like, are the kids home? And we're not home, right? That's a false alarm, okay? Versus no signal, no response, that's the correct rejection. Does that make sense? You don't need to spend a lot of time memorizing it, but I would want you to recognize it as, oh, this is signal detection theory, not absolute threshold, not context effects, signal detection theory. You guys with me? Okay, subliminal stimulation. Disney has been accused of subliminal messaging, sexual subliminal messaging, and many other different things quite often, okay? So, what is subliminal messaging? It is any stimulation that you are aware of that is below, well, not aware of, it is stimulation below the absolute threshold that is outside of conscious awareness. It is a subliminal message if it is below your absolute threshold for conscious awareness. Question, what is absolute threshold? Can you tell me what absolute threshold is?
50% of the time.
Your ability to detect a faint stimuli 50% of the time. Well done. Okay, so when we're looking at subliminal messages, ready? The brain senses the information. Okay, your brain, your biology senses it. However, your mind does not consciously interpret that information and attach meaning to it. So back in like the 90s to early 2000s, this whole worry of subliminal messaging and how it was affecting society and specifically teens became very, very much a big deal. Okay, people still do somewhat talk about it today, but it was this idea that subliminal messages were being sent through pretty much media, like music and movies. And it was this idea that messages, kind of like secret, very, very negative messages, like satanic words, sexual stuff was being sent in through music and movies. And the ways that that happened, here's two examples, was through something called backmasking, for instance, and this would be where you played a song backwards, and all of a sudden it was like a satanic like prayer, something like that, right? And there's like some evidence for it, but it's like, like people were potentially doing it, but does it have an effect is what we're talking about here. 25th frame was also a thing that was done and thought to be a big deal, and it was that your actual eye, your anatomy, can only process 23 to 24 frames in like a fraction of a second, right? So the idea was, well, what if we just slip a frame in that frame that's not consciously processed, and we'll put our message, and that's where like a sexual image was put, or something off, like a violent image or something like that, right? And it was the idea that you won't consciously process it, but your brain, it'll still get in there and it will like impact you, right? So this is also, Disney has been, there's a lot of like videos you can show where Disney has like sexual like things, like when the leaves blow, it spells out like the word sex or something, or the ice cubes in the Coca-Cola says something weird. Anyway, so with that being said, all of these things, believe it or not, guys, are relying on top-down processing, where you're just automatically, boom, attaching meaning. So subliminal stimulation, if you get asked about that, no, it could be asking about how it is a form of relying on you attaching meaning and giving top-down processing, even though the actual sensation isn't quite there. Does that make sense? Or it's subliminal, it's below your absolute threshold. So the question is, does this work? Does subliminal messaging work?
Yes.
The answer is kind of, sort of, maybe, okay? So the idea with this was that it was like changing people's lives and making people like do horrible things. There's no actual evidence. Oh, we'll finish this tomorrow. Bye, guys. No, we won't. We'll finish it on Monday. You do not have homework, but you do have to do your note cards. Please do your note cards.
When are the note cards?